This is the Global Broadcasting Service, serving remote outposts since 1928.
Hi, everyone. Welcome aboard the Walt Disney World Express monorail.
Caramba, we have something really big for you today.
Welcome, foolish mortals.
Now then, hang on to them hats and glasses, because this here's the wildest ride in the wilderness.
This is the DBC Pod with Phil Schoen and Jason Dodge. Hey everybody, welcome to this week's pod. This is the week in review of July 10th, 2021. Another week we're recording on Monday, Phil. I think this is a trend for the summer, I think.
I think so. I think it's summertime, right?
It's summer hours. Summer
hours, yeah.
We have neighbors and friends that happen to come over on Sunday evenings for a barbecue, whereas last summer, obviously, we didn't have much of that. So I think we're making up for lost time. This week's show has got a lot of controversy attached to it. I think we've been hinting at it. But Jungle Cruise soft opens next week for Disneyland. So for those brave enough to watch spoilers, you get to check out what they're doing over there. I think it's not one-to-one change, right? Like there's going to be differences on each coast, Phil, I think.
Well, each ride's a little bit different. The one in Walt Disney World is longer. So I'm hoping there's going to be some extra scenes. The whole temple scene is only in Walt Disney World, so I'm hoping they add a little to that, but we'll find out.
I should
think
stop
the
asking
main
you questions.
Are similar. I know.
I should stop asking you questions on the intro, because that's exactly what we're going to talk about as soon as we get out of the intro. Also, the big news this week is Disneyland Paris added a Premier Access system for their Fastpass system that raised a lot of ire on the internets. I'm kind of okay with it, but we'll talk about that also. Attractionality this week is an obvious one. It's Happily Ever After with very predictable scores, if you could possibly imagine. And then we have a one-episode DBC Expedition this week on Mary Blair. Next week, we're going to have a special guest. That's going to be our own DBC Expedition. It's going to be an author. So pay attention to Phil on social media to find out who it is. Maybe you'll tease him later on in the show. I don't know. I'll leave that one up to you.
Okay.
With that being said, let's get started. But this week's DCI Disney Comeback Index, we're up to a 65.34. Phil, full percentage uptick. A lot of the things that captured that uptick was Ohana reopens. We've gotten was it the Very Merriest After Hours event. That's pretty cool. Let's see, we've got a fancy graphic of one of our community members. This is as of July 9th, 2021. The score was 64.3. So you can see in the space of 3 days, it went from 64.3 to over 65, which is really cool. Something to check out. So we're slowly crawling back. We need to get Matt on to find out what's really going to make the biggest jump. Because if you're looking at I'll put the graphics back on the screen. Actually, we'll put a better picture up here for everybody to see on TV. Attractions are almost already back. We're at 93%. It's the entertainment that's on the bottom third, and it's paid events. So I don't think there's many paid events that fill up that box, but they have a big percentage. So you can see how they're weighted on here. So I think we should get Matt out because he's been working on an interesting project. Maybe we can talk about that in a week or two. He's going back over the last year and filling in the progression of the DCI from reopening. Did Disney World reopen almost a year to this day? I think.
Yes, this past week we passed was the 1 year anniversary of when Walt Disney World reopened. So kind of crazy that it's already been open in this somewhat modified format for a year now.
Yep. For sure. So with that being said, the DCI 65%, and now for the news.
And Jason already mentioned it, but the first news topic is about the Jungle Cruise at Disneyland, which it has its official reopening date on July 16th, so in just a few days, but it's soft opened this past week. And so obviously got people rushing out there to get their point of view videos up there on YouTube, and it was nice to see a lot of the new additions. Obviously, the changes made to be more culturally appropriate, less offensive, but they just added a lot more things related to the skippers, a lot more things just in the water. Like there's just more storyline elements to it. And I don't know if you want me to tell some of the puns, but they had some new puns that went along with the news.
I'm playing the video in the background with no sound. I don't know. Should we spoil? I mean, you'd be spoiling me, but pick one. And
right.
if you care about this, close your ears for like
10 seconds.
10 seconds, yes.
So I think the one I liked the best was when they're at the end and they have the new gift shop, the Trader Sam's gift shop, that the skipper said, if you're interested in a hat, you can ask any of us because everyone at the Jungle Cruise is really good at cap sizing. So
it's new, but it's already a classic.
I know, it's already exactly. But also that came out was that D23 announced a gold event. Although if you're interested in it, sorry you're too late, it's already sold out. But they were going to have a preview where you would get early entrance into the park about 2 hours early on the 16th. And they had they're going to have interviews with a number of the Imagineers that worked on the project. There are going to be some giveaways and stuff like that. And then you would obviously get to ride the ride in the new version before anybody else, except for those, I guess, that got to ride it with the soft opening.
That sounds like fun.
But yeah, it seemed like a really neat thing. It was about $75, but obviously they went in like 5 seconds. But
of course.
But that was a neat little thing that I saw. The next news item is also something Jason alluded to, was about the Disneyland Paris introducing what they're calling Premier Access, which is a paid Fastpass service. And they're also adding a virtual queue functionality for the standby lines called Standby Pass. So got to have all our new names and new acronyms and all that sort of stuff. Over at Disneyland Paris, it's not for as many rides as we have at Walt Disney World. It's Autopia, Big Thunder Mountain, Peter Pan's Flight, Ratatouille, Buzz Lightyear, Space Mountain, Star Tours, and the Twilight Zone Tower Tower. Those are the only ones that have Fastpass eligible for them. And just to go through some of the details quickly, if people, if you really want to get to the nuts and bolts, trust me, people are talking about it on social media.
All over the place.
But I think what's interesting about it to think about if something like this were to come to the States, this isn't something you book ahead of time. It's not like Fastpass Plus. It was you do a day of after you get into the park. You're able to go into, using the app. If there's a ride you want to buy a Fastpass for, it'll show you what time slots are available for that day, and you can buy it. Similarly, if you are going to go on the standby queue and it's full to capacity, however long they want the actual physical queue to get, they will say, look to the app and find a virtual queue time slot where you would pick that slot similarly. And just when your time is due, I believe you have a half hour to come back and scan your phone, the QR code on that, and you'll go in. So it's a similar process for each, just obviously some of the slots are for virtual queue for the standby line, and then some are for the paid Fastpass, which would get you a much shorter line to go on. Obviously, everybody's wondering about price.
Oh, yes.
This is in euros, but they said it will range depending on the attraction and the day of visit, so it's not a consistent thing. But converting from euros to dollars, it's anywhere from about $10 to $18 per paid Fastpass.
So we have a couple talking points to go over.
Yes.
Right? So let's go over some of the rumors that we've heard, because Disneyland Paris has had a couple versions of paid Fastpasses before.
Correct.
So this is not new for them. Disneyland Resort out in California has had its own version of Max Pass and pay for access. Yes. And all the Chinese and Japan have had versions of paid Fastpasses as well. So basically, Walt Disney World is the only one that did not have a money-based system. So let's kind of put it that way. So a lot of the rumors that we've talked about in the show in the previous weeks, it's just not going to be buy a ticket here and there. They're thinking about different groups of tickets. So you get your own booklet. So you would get all the mountains, or you would get a Hyper Fantasyland book where you get like 4 passes and you would pay $50 for them or something. People are suggesting that's what it might be. But of course, because Disney makes an official announcement, Disneyland Paris, they assume this is going to be a carbon copy in Disney World. So I'm stressing to everybody that does not mean Disney World Orlando is going to have the same thing as Paris, because it's never had the same thing. So We'll start there. However, because it's fun and it gets everybody riled up, first let's talk about price. What do you think about that?
So I think it's not crazy. $10 or something like that per ride. If you just kind of have to factor that into your budget and stuff like that. Obviously, it's per person. So for my family, it would be $50 or whatever per ride. So it adds up, but it could definitely be worse. I don't know. I think it's one of those things where if it's a ride that is like a must do for us, and this is the way to get it in, we would do it here or there. I don't think we would do it a lot, especially. I like the idea of that virtual queue element for the standby as well.
Well, that's my second point. So let's save the commentary for that.
Yeah. So I think it's, if it comes in around this rate, it's probably the price that we would do. I don't know, 1 to 3 per trip or something like that for things that were must do if we felt like we kind of had to in order to get on that ride.
Now, is this trip a 1 week long trip where you get multiple park days, at least 2 Magic Kingdom days? Let's just set it at that. You have 2 Magic Kingdom days for your trip. You're saying you would do this 1 or 3 times plus across the other parks as well?
Not per day. Like I think just one
across the week.
Across the week, something like that. Yeah, and depending on how Magic Kingdom is, if we have multiple days there, maybe we wouldn't use it there. But if it was at Animal Kingdom and the lines are crazy for Flight of Passage and we wanted to do it, or I'm also playing it ahead when say Guardians and Tron opens up, those types of things, where it's like a new ride, we haven't been on it, and that's the only way realistically we're going to get on it. I'd be willing to do it at these price points for a couple rides, I think.
I have no problem spending $50 to save 2 hours on a brand new ride.
Yeah.
I mean, $50 is not terrible for my whole family because, again, I have a family of 5 as well. Reminder to all of you out there. So once you start going into, what was it, $18 on the top end, so now you're getting closer to $100 for a ride. Yeah. I start getting a little squeamish about that, unless it's like it's a second day of my Disney Hollywood Studios trip and I haven't gotten on Rise yet and I'm getting desperate. Like I spent all this money to get down here. I can't get on Rise for the first time. I'm going to start opening up my my wallet for that, I think.
Exactly.
But yeah, I doubt that the prices are going to be this low for Disney World. They're probably going to be higher. But let's talk about why they're going to be higher. It's because they want to control the amount of people that are in that FastPass lane, or because there's a couple different things that we've got to assume. Standby lines move faster, right? So there's going to be less congestion at that. And typically, we were talking about this in Discord earlier. Was it? Yeah, definitely earlier this week, a couple days ago. We were talking about where the Fast Pass line, it's like basically like 70-30, like 70% of the line going forward is Fast Pass, and then it's 30%. So for every 7 Fast Pass guests, there's 3 standby guests.
Right. Depends on the ride and the time and stuff like that, but that, kind of in that ballpark, yeah.
In that spectrum, right? It's definitely not 20% Fast Pass, 80% standby.
No. So it's way more Fast Pass than standby.
Right. So it's on the higher end of the spectrum. So now that you're paying money for this access, obviously people are going to be saying, well, I paid money for this, so why am I still waiting an hour or 30 minutes and stuff like that? So they have to price it enough so it doesn't fill up, I think, right? So you can't fall into that trap. That's going to be a nightmare in its own right. And then I think another aspect no one else kind of mentions is let me pause this. The line aspect of things. Do you think that is going to be a huge change for most people that are going to Disney World, where they have to realize that their standby line is just now it's normal? So like, a 2-hour standby line might not be 2 hours anymore, or 1 hour.
You mean for using the virtual queue, or just that it's moving faster? That
it's just moving faster, right?
Yeah.
You have to get used to that moving
people
faster.
that have been going now, they might be used to it because they're seeing these queues that physically are like 2 miles long. But they're moving, and so they actually get done not too bad. And like you said, when you're moving, it doesn't feel quite as long as when you're just stuck in one spot for a while. So I think people get the hang of it, that they're like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe I'm not doing as many Fast Passes or whatever, but the standby line moves, and it's trade-offs everywhere. But it's a new system. People will complain at the beginning, but then they'll adapt and kind of figure out what works best for them, for sure.
And then the next part of this is the virtual versus standby queue. Why don't you explain to the people how that works technically?
So the idea, and I'm not sure the specifics of like time and size and stuff like that over at Paris, but the idea would be how once the physical queue gets beyond sort of the borders of it, they don't want to go to like an extended queue. They would turn on the virtual queue. It's sort of like what they use over at Universal for Hagrid's now. And the idea is, once you go to the virtual queue, you sign up for a slot. Maybe it's for an hour from now. Okay, well, you go off and do something else, maybe another ride that has no line, or go get something to eat, whatever it is, and then when your time comes up, you scan it and you can get into this physical standby queue. So the idea there is that you're not going to walk right in like with a fast pass, but you're only going to be in the physical queue for say 45 minutes or something like that. You're going to avoid those like 4-hour just standing in a spot, not spending money things.
Right. I love that idea. So once you get to that spillover section,
Mm-hmm.
you can go and get your ticket and come back. So it's like almost like a mini fast pass to stand in a line.
Yeah, it's almost like the old paper fast pass type thing, except obviously using your phone. It's just that you don't get to go in the fast pass line. You just get into the standby line, and you're still going to have a little bit of a wait, but not hours.
So let's say you have now a vacation where you have almost no fast passes, because there has been no mention of any on-site benefits for guests to get free fast passes. You'll never see all the cool queues ever again.
Right.
So I mean, it's. I think some of the fast pass lines are really cool, and I dig them.
Well, though on some rides, it's the standby actually has
right.
Like even on Flight of Passage, if you do the fast pass one, you don't get to see all the cool stuff and things, and the Peter Pan line, all the interactive.
I know. As I was saying that, it was like the Peter Pan line is the one that's standby. That's really cool. I'm like, I'm going to be swallowing my words. Here's the other aspect of it that is going to be problematic. Because I don't know how they do it in other parks, but for Disney World, a lot of the pixie dust and magic that cast members can do is give you a free fast pass for like, hey, here's little princess, you can go, fast pass to meet Tiana or something else like that, right? Now it's like, the cast member says to a whole family, hey, I want you guys to have a great vacation, or sorry for that person that bumped into you and dropped your soda. Like, here's a free soda and a free fast pass to make your day better. Yep. Now you just gave fast passes to a whole family. That has a monetary value of like $100, right? So are cast members going to get fired for giving away fast passes? And are people going to get jealous that like, okay, I just got free fast pass, instead of just enjoying them for being able to go on rides? They're like, oh, I just got $100 worth of fast passes. Disney company might not like that. I don't know. Yeah. So what other? To me, it's just what other pixie dust can cast members give?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I guess could they add it to your account or whatever, that you get a credit or something like that for a fast pass, or maybe they can get you into the virtual queue standby, move that up, or I don't know. Maybe there'll still be room.
It's gonna be tricky.
Oh, I'll let you guys into the standby queue. You don't have to wait for the slot or something. I don't know. We'll see.
By the way, if you follow us on Twitter. Phil puts out all these cool pictures of some of the merch that he buys from time to time, and you got a new tiki mug, I believe I saw a couple days ago. Yes. I'm still stuck drinking my free dining mug, and Phil's got all the cool stuff that he kind of drinks his coffee and beverages out of. Just want to point that out. I've still got the 5-year-old one, and Phil's got all the cool stuff.
Yeah, it was a new Haunted Mansion bride tiki mug.
See, typically I kind of just like, oh, that's kind of cool, and then I move on with my life. Yeah. I mean, I looked at that literally for like 2 minutes. I'm like, should I buy that? Because Haunted Mansion is one of my favorites, so it's a good combination of two things. All right, we stayed on this topic long enough. I mean, granted, everybody's been staying on this topic for like most of the week, so I think we gave it fair justice. But let's move on.
Yeah, so I'll try to go through the next couple items pretty quick. Disney did announce the reopening dates for all of the remaining hotels, so we will start to see more hotel rooms open up. All-Star Music is on September 16th. That's the only one that will be opening up before the 50th event starts. The big ones that people have been waiting for, the Port Orleans resorts, Riverside, October 14th, and French Quarter, October 28th. And then the last All-Stars, the sports, will be opening December 9th. So everything will be open by the end of the year, but some of them not until we've already started the 50th celebration. The other thing kind of with this is some people are getting sticker shock at some of the pricing, with the Port Orleans resorts being over like $350 a night and stuff like that. But
well, I have to say that was the rack rate going into pre-COVID. It was at $3 to quarter, $350 for a lot of stuff. The sticker shock was like the cabins at like $4 to $4 and a quarter.
Yeah,
pre-COVID.
I think
they're not that new.
Yeah, also used to there being some sort of discount. I think now, and then there's really no discounts out, so it's like you're kind of stuck with the rack rate.
That hurts.
Also, the full list of resorts that are eligible for early entry, which is the ones, 30 minutes early every day, every park, beginning October 1st, which is basically all of the Disney resorts and a number of the Good Neighbor ones. And also for the evening hours, which is just for the deluxe resorts and DVC starting after that. I'm not going to go through the whole list, but I think the interesting thing is that even for the early entry, Shades of Green, and also the Swan and Dolphin were not included in that. And those were ones that in the past got extra magic hours. So that's something to keep in mind. I know sometimes people look to the Swan or Dolphin as an option for kind of a nicer place to stay that's a little cheaper if they use their Marriott points or whatever. Now you won't get this benefit. And the one benefit of us delaying our recording until today is that news came out today about Disney's Very Merriest After Hours, kind of the least creative name they could have come up with for it, is their new holiday themed event that is happening this year. It will be similar to Boo Bash in that is an after hours event happening when the park closes. You will have the park to yourself from 4 hours instead of 3 hours, which with Boo Bash, so it's from like 9 p.m. to 1 a.m. So it's a good long time. You do also get in early at 7 p.m. And kind of the big thing is that they will have their own special themed fireworks show called Minnie's Wonderful Christmas Time Fireworks. There will also be characters walking around. They haven't said details about that. There was no mention of parade or cavalcades or anything like that. Just that there will be characters around or character opportunities, treats, and more.
Lovely.
Scott Gustin tweeted a lot of the details. He reached out to Disney to get some details, and he did say that guests should be able to double dip and see 2 fireworks shows because you can come in as early as 7. So you will be able to see Disney Enchantment, and then also get to see the Christmas fireworks later. So, you know, if you don't have a park ticket that day and you do that and you get in at 7 and can see 2 fireworks shows, you know, that kind of adds value to it. Speaking of value, we do not know the pricing for this. People are speculating with the extra hour and the fireworks and stuff like that. It's probably going to be even more than Boo Bash, but we shall see.
People love memories of being in the parks at like till 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
So I guarantee you people are going to be they were all over Boo Bash, and Boo Bash wasn't giving you anything. And now you're getting all this extra stuff. Yeah, they're going to be all over this.
Yeah. And there's a whole lot of details around the other stuff that they're doing. You know, they're bringing back the gingerbread houses to the resorts. They talked about the Epcot International Festival of Holidays, which the one big note about that is they dropped the whole taste of thing. So it's a full-blown Epcot festival. It's not a taste of the festival. They also talked about a Voices of Liberty performance. The one thing that didn't come out was about Candlelight Processional, so people are a little upset about that. And nothing about Jingle Bam or Jingle Bell, Jingle Bam or anything like that at Hollywood Studios. It seems like the only show they will have is the projections on the Tower of Terror. And of course, with all their great retro holiday decorations around. So
those looks nice.
Yeah. So the lots of, they came out with a lot of information there. They're doing the whole halfway to Christmas thing. So that's why today they announced all of the holiday things.
Oh,
so
yes.
It's nice to see all this stuff come back. But obviously the big chatter was about the after hours event. Again, not like a traditional Christmas party, but another after hours event.
Do you decorate a lot for Christmas in your house?
Not a lot. I always do lights outside, and we always have a couple things up. I'm not a big one because it just takes time to put up and then time to take down and stuff like that. So we always have a few things up. We do usually a couple Disney things and a couple manger scenes and stuff like that, but not a ton.
Yeah, we go all out because my question was going to be because I don't want to hear about Christmas yet. Like the summer's just starting, so I was going to ask you when do you usually start decorating for Christmas? And it's for me, it's always like the day after Thanksgiving, but I'm thinking about starting earlier this year.
Last year, I actually put up the outside lights really early, like mid-November or like something like that, because I think it was just like with everything going on in the world, I'm like, I'm putting up the lights now, dang it!
That's my thing. Last year I put up some lights, but if everybody remembers, I moved into my new house December 12th, so I didn't get the full effect. So I'm like, I want like 2 long full months of this stuff. Anyway, It's not time to talk about Christmas.
And the last bit of news, which actually rumors, something that's been out there before. But it was posted on WDW Magic that they are hearing the on again, off again is now on again, that a WreckIt Ralph attraction is likely to replace Stitch's Great Escape in Tomorrowland. So, I mean, hopefully they put something there. It'd be nice. They have so much stuff in Tomorrowland that's just not doesn't have anything in it. But I don't know if WreckIt Ralph's the best fit, but nothing's really a good fit for what they have in Tomorrowland right now. So if they're going with more of kind of the retro Tomorrow futuristic view, then I guess retro video gaming kind of fits that. But
Tomorrowland has no theme anymore. It's just white buildings and old attractions and empty buildings too. I think it's fine. Anything they could put in that building. There's rumors that the what is it, Planet Venus gift shop? Did I get that right?
No, it's what is it? Merchants of Venus.
Merchants of Venus. Yes, thank you. It's been closed, and they've been told that they're not getting that retail space back. So that might be part of what's fueling some of these rumors. I believe it's all like blacked out, like you can't even see in the windows anymore and stuff like that. Anything that can make Tomorrowland better would be great, because now you put this in. Who knows when that actually opens up and they can get finished, and then either get rid of Buzz or spruce that up a little bit so this part of the park doesn't look as sad and empty. That would make me very happy.
Like you said, redo that, get something kind of fun with Ralph in there. You got Tron coming. I mean, it could kind of, it's not like overhauling the entire land, but it could kind of revitalize it a little bit.
Get some cool lights going through that thing. Yeah. Let that once nighttime hits, that whole part of the park should be like a beacon of light, like just kind of going straight up. So I'm curious to see how Tron is, because if Tron's a huge hit, which probably will be, I think they're going to start kind of pushing out some of the theming over the years. Obviously, it's not going to happen, unfortunately, right away.
And that is it for the news. Reminder of our social media accounts: Twitter @PodDBC, Instagram the DBC Podcast, Facebook DBC Pod, and of course our YouTube channel and the Discord server.
Yes, I want to point out that everybody on Discord and our podcast listeners have been a very good help to us launching our YouTube channel. We're over 50 subscribers, but we need more. Our first subscriber goal is 100, so you can get that personalized URL, and then Phil can actually link it nicely in all the social media. So if you are listening to this, but you're not a YouTube listener, please head over to our YouTube channel and just like and subscribe all the videos. It helps us out. And then if you are a podcast listener, head over to iTunes and give us a 5-star rating and leave some questions for us. We'll read them back on the show, that type of thing. That helps us, other people find us, and also join the community on the Discord server, where we have robust arguments about everything. And you'll know exactly what we're talking about once we start talking about Black Widow. So a little bit of spoilers down the line. With that being said, let's head over to Attractionality. Like we mentioned earlier at the top of the show, we talked about Happily Ever After this week. I'm going to show the overall scores, Phil. And I think we're going to run through this one pretty quickly because it's an obvious one. So the scores this week, for all the questions that we normally ask every single week, I rated them all 5s. Phil, did you rate any one a 4?
I had probably some of the lower ratings.
Oh my goodness! What?
Not
now
low.
We have to talk about it.
I know. Well, I gave the first 3 4s. And then
okay, so let's start. Like, you're going to be disagreeing, we should talk about this then. Okay, so how much do you like the concept of the attraction? You gave it a 4. Why do you not like the concept?
So, it's a lot of it's going to come down to, I don't like the concept of the nighttime show that requires you to have a certain viewpoint.
Okay, that's fair.
And I think it just detracts from the whole experience. I think I've mentioned on the podcast before, the last time we watched it, multiple of my kids were crying because of how the crowd was treating them and acting. And so I think it just sort of drags the whole experience down for me. I think it's an amazingly beautiful, technically amazing show, but that aspect of it just made me not able to click the 5s. I think it's a great show, but that really, and that's why the last one with the fit, I gave it a 3.
Typical Epcot fanboys. How well do you think Happily Ever After delivers to target audience? And it's, again, the same reasoning. You have to stand in a certain spot. That's a big complaint for everybody. If you want to watch the awesome show, the best spot is like right at the hub. Another day since the show's going away, I won't share the tips that I've had that I've shared plenty of other times of where's the best place to stand. So that's why I think the new show is going to be awesome, because it's all up and down Main Street. So it'd be cool.
Absolutely.
You don't personally enjoy Happily Ever After as much because your kids are crying. That's your lasting memory of it. But what did you score? Question 4, how well do you think Happily Ever After fits into the Magic Kingdom?
So I give it a 3. I think it's more for the physical nature of it. That's
it doesn't fit?
Well, physically, the where they put it, it creates the angle issue. Obviously, I think what they're doing, the message of it and stuff like that fits into Magic Kingdom as a whole.
So you went literally fits into the Magic. So you were very literal with this.
I was very literal because so that I could not get a point. Yeah.
Okay, very good. No, I'll take it because I gave these all 5s because I love the projections. We talked about this last week. How the first time I went down with my family was, and I saw Wishes in 2015, and I completely forgot that I saw Wishes, and I assume Happily Ever After has been there forever. Because that's how much I love the concept of the thing. The show always gives me chills whenever I watch it. I love it. I have good memories with my oldest daughter with it, and unfortunately we can't see it again, at least not for another year and a half, maybe at least or so. Obviously, I personally enjoy it very well, and I think it fits because it's all pixie dust and love and great music and all this other stuff that people really like. So I'm all.
And I do,
vibes on that.
we keep always saying, like, or at least I say, Epcot, we don't want too much IP in their new show and Harmonious and stuff like that. I mean, I think all the IP that they have in Happily Ever After, like, that's the place for it, right? I mean, that's
okay.
where you get all the
That's good.
Characters and stuff like that.
Kind of go over some of the scores here. I'm going to put the scores back on the screen. Final scores for each of the 4 questions were 4.5, 4.6, 4.3, and 4.7. So personal enjoyment got the least amount of scores, but it was heavily balanced between 5 and 4. And some of the people playing games gave it 0s because they were being a little, I think, facetious. And then some people gave it a 10, and all those scores do not count for Adam, a.k.a. Cassius Stone's record keeping. So for those out there that thought they could be tricksters, I think it's Mitt. Shame on you. It doesn't count. Ha, 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 ha. That being said, what do you want to see different with Disney Enchantment compared to Happily Ever After? And I think I know what your answer is, but I'm going to let you actually.
Well, I think, the biggest thing is leveraging the other areas to have the projection, so you don't have to have just that one angle. You can allow people to spread out some more. The only other thing I could see is there were a couple jumbled IP things. Like the one that always stands out to me is in the Brave scene. All of a sudden, the cars show up, and like I don't understand why they're in like Ireland and stuff like that. So if they could just be a little bit like more precise with how they're using their IP, I think I would enjoy that. But to me, the big thing is, and I mean, I think that's why they're doing it, right? They learned the one drawback of Happily Ever After was that viewpoint issue, and they're addressing it. So if they kind of do everything that's great about Happily Ever After,
but are they really? Because here's the thing. I'm thinking, okay, they're going to have project all up and down Main Street. It's going to look awesome. But any busy, crowded day at Magic Kingdom, all of Main Street is crowded already. I mean, it just starts thinning out probably maybe 20 feet past Starbucks in the bakery there. I mean, it's still pretty packed.
I mean, I think on the really crowded days, it'll still be crowded kind of everywhere. But I think on an average day, if people are more spread out and know that they can still like get a good view, they won't have to line up quite as early and stuff like that. So I think there'll still be benefits of it. But
this is what I want ultimately. And it's probably not going to be this iteration of the show. It's going to be the next one in 10 years or whenever they pop up the next version of it. Is I'd love to see them expand the projections all the way through the park. Right, so I want to see projections in Adventureland, Tomorrowland. Tomorrowland's got plenty of white screen space for projections, right? Not only is it going to make this park better in non-firework times, but I mean, imagine being able to have a viewing area in Adventureland and see a different aspect of the show from Fantasyland, et cetera, et cetera. I think that would truly make the whole park a celebration at the end of the day versus just like kind of standing crammed in one spot. So I hope they expanded not just down Main Street, but broader throughout the hub. So everybody gets a cool viewing section. They're installing new firework launch stations and stuff like that. I saw somebody. I don't think it was a Bio Reconstruct post, but
no, somebody else had stuff. But
yeah. So it might be. I can't wait to see it. It's going to be awesome. Now here's a question: you're going to be there on October 1st. If you weren't going to be there for the debut of this show, if you're not there October, you are at there October 1st.
I'm at Magic Kingdom October 1st. Yeah.
So. Would you watch the like? Let's say you're me, right? I'm going down a couple weeks after you. Would you not watch it until you get there, or do you have to watch it? What would you do?
Knowing it's only like a couple weeks, I probably would try to not watch it. If it was like a couple months, like 6 months or something like that, I would watch it. But if it's only like a week or two, like you are, I would do my best to not watch. I mean, it'd probably be hard not to see it.
It's going to be hard, Phil. I don't think I'm going to try to do it.
You know what? Actually, if I'm being truthful for myself, I would definitely watch a clip because I really would want to see, well, what are they doing on Main Street? but I think I could hold myself to not watch like the whole thing from beginning to end.
Maybe if I could hold myself to do it, I'm gonna just have a camera like just showing my face during the show, right? So if I could go in like clean slate, maybe we'll put a video on YouTube of just watching my face as it goes on, so you can see my reaction, my dumb face going like whatever, and then my kids screaming in the back, and my wife saying, "Let's go, let's beat the crowd," and all this other stuff. But well, we'll see. That might be an interesting experiment. All right, next thing, we both saw Black Widow.
Correct.
And there's some couple cool stats here.
Yes.
Before we go into like kind of the review, spoilers for the section, maybe. I mean, maybe we don't. It's gonna be mild spoilers.
Yeah, let's try to keep it not nothing major, but it's gonna be hard not to spoil it.
Yeah. By the way, Black Widow dies. I mean, not in this movie, but eventually,
yes,
right?
Yes.
Just in case. Oh, spoilers. Endgame. All right, so let's go to some of the stats here. Let me bring it up. So Eric Goldman on Twitter, Black Widow made over $60 million on Disney Plus with Premier Access. Touted debut of $215 million globally. I think this is one of the first major releases in a movie post-pandemic. I mean, we're not really post-pandemic, but post-vaccine, right?
Yep.
What do you think about the combination of Premier Access and theatrical release? Good? Yes? We want to keep seeing it from Disney?
I think as long as they keep pushing stuff to theaters and they want to say, okay, if you don't want to go, this is another way to watch it. That's great. I mean, I know that's the concern of some people, is that too many people get used to watching at home and they won't go to theaters, and it'll hurt the theater industry and stuff like that. But I think, I don't know, so many things were predicted to hurt the theater industry and it never happened. So, I mean, to me, if I'm seeing a Marvel or a Star Wars movie or something, I'm going to go to the theater.
Exactly.
So
I did not go to the theaters to see this one. I wanted to, but I didn't have a chance to go. I wasn't going to go bring my kids to the theaters on opening weekend anyway, because I probably would have brought my 3.5-year-old, even though maybe I shouldn't have, would have. But anyway, I would have done that, and I didn't want to pay I don't even know what kids tickets are in prime time first release weekend. I don't know, like $10, $15, right? So it would have cost us $45 plus $50 plus with concessions and stuff like that. Yeah. So we decided to watch it at home. Then my wife got to see it and all this other stuff. So Disney's capturing me in that aspect, right? Who knows? Maybe I will go see the theaters with my father down the road, right? If it's still out in the theaters in a couple weeks, in a month. So maybe they capture me again. I definitely like a Star Wars. I'm going to see in the theater because you need that experience. But there's some other movies that they might be able to get me to buy if they do tiered pricing, because we were talking about this in Discord earlier, or at least I was. Like, I would pay $30 for a Marvel or a Star Wars movie or something of that caliber, right? Like a cultural event. But Cruella, I'm not paying the money, $30 to kind of see it, unless it was you get me to a board night and like, screw it, I'm gonna pay for it. Why not? Yeah. But like, I could see more movies being released on Premiere for like $20 or $50, capturing more people that probably would have waited for a DVD or a rental or something else like that. That was like, a couple bucks.
Yeah, for me too. It's also that it's not that long of a wait to get it without the Premiere access. So like, that's what we're doing with Cruella, because it was only a couple months, and it's not like something like, oh my God, everybody's going to spoil Cruella. I can't not see it. So
spoiler, she dies.
Yeah, everybody dies. But like, when the next, big, Marvel or Star Wars movie or something comes out, like, I'm going to want to see it, because I'm not going to wait 3 months, for the next thing. But for something where it doesn't really matter, like, for example, if they charged for Luca, I don't think I'd pay for Luca, because if I see Luca now or 2 months from now, it's kind of the same.
Exactly. Yeah,
so that's the one that's kind of negatively impacting me to pay for a lot of them. If they were saying it was more like a 6-month delay, they might get me to buy more things. But,
you're giving it. I mean, but also enriches the Disney Plus platform, right?
Oh yeah.
So they need that tease to keep you paying the. Well, you're not paying anything right now because you already paid for it. But in a year and a half from now, or wherever that deal runs out, the D23 deal runs out, you got to pay for it, and getting access to every couple months, a decently major movie comes out, or a decently produced film, like a Pixar type of thing. I think that adds value to the subscription.
Absolutely.
So I think that's why they're doing that.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so on to the movie. Overall, somebody on our Discord server, we were chatting about it, really did not like when a lot of people were saying that this movie was unnecessary, did not need to happen. It was confusing, and it was not confusing, but it was just like, what's the point of this movie other than maybe the end credit scene? And right. he was a major MCU White Knight fan. Yeah. So what do you think about that argument, Phil?
So I think it's kind of like a balance thing, right? Like I think it's great this movie exists. I think it's great that, it was kind of a female-driven action movie. That's great. I'm really glad the movie existed. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I don't think it was the most amazing thing ever. A lot of the plot line felt kind of like filler. Like, I think we were saying now, especially seeing things like Loki and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
They could have introduced some of these characters in a couple episodes of just add a couple more episodes onto Hawkeye or something like that.
Maybe 1.5.
Yeah, or something like that. And you could accomplish that. Now, that doesn't mean it's a mistake to have it as a movie or that it's bad to have it as a movie. So I think sometimes when we're saying filler, it came off too negative as saying, like, I wish this movie wasn't made. That's not the case.
Oh, well, I enjoyed the movie. I completely agree, right? I'm glad it was there. I enjoyed the heck out of it. But to me, it's kind of like opportunity cost, right? You only get X amount of MCU movies a year. And we're at the point where we're getting multiple, right? And we're happy about that, right? So we're wasting an opportunity to get a really cool story. And don't get me wrong, when I do my next, about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, I finished an MCU run with all my kids. And I'm going to think watching Black Widow right before Infinity War is going to be excellent because it's a nice little piece to the puzzle of the overall. And I'm going to love it. I'm going to love it there. So this argument is really only for like 2021. And I much rather would have seen like almost anything else that continues the story of Marvel, because like I'm super stoked to see where we've got Loki going on. We're going to be recording final episode in a couple days, and we've got the anticipation for the new Spider-Man, the new Ant-Man, Doctor Strange 2, like the Eternals coming up in a couple months, like
Shang-Chi.
Oh my gosh, but like all of a sudden it's just like, okay, well, let's go back, 5 years ago before Infinity War or wherever, and like it's just like a little window of time. And we never heard about this. We never got it. She never mentioned any of these characters. It's like, okay, you met your sister after all these years, and then your dad, but you never brought it up in any of the movies. It's kind of like a Star Wars thing almost, right? It's like a prequel. It's like, oh, Ahsoka, you met Darth Vader, but we never heard of you ever again, type of thing. Not to that degree, I'm not saying it, but it just kind of fits like, okay, it's a nice little story, but that's basic. I mean, I don't have anything bad to say about it other than, okay, thanks. I want to see Eternals now, please. Thank you.
Yeah.
Can we get a good trailer for that movie?
Oh, you don't like the trailers for that so far?
It's too ambiguous. I want to know more, but I think that's part of the mystique.
I think absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so what do you think about the end credit scene? Elaine comes to the grave of Natasha and talks to her sister and says, Hawkeye is a bad guy. He killed your sister eventually. What do you think about the whole thing?
Well, my understanding is the order is that this was supposed to come out earlier before Falcon and the Winter Soldier, where kind of the same thing happens where she recruits somebody else in that movie too. So this was supposed to be the first time you see that character. So I think clearly she's building up a team and she's trying to manipulate them a little bit into doing her bidding and tricking her into thinking that Hawkeye's a bad guy. I'm assuming during the plot of Hawkeye, she will find out that he is in fact not the bad guy and what really happened to Natasha. So I thought it was fine. I think, heading into it, I heard some rumors like there's this huge
Thunderbolts
big event that happens, and you got to watch the end credit scene, and when it happened, it's like, oh, okay, so it's kind of like the same thing that happened before. So
I'm trying to think, if we watch no COVID, we watched this last summer, and then we watched Winter Soldier as it was released this year. You'd have been, oh, there's that character. Oh, you're learning a little bit more. Okay,
but exactly.
She didn't have like a huge part. I mean, she was part of it, right? But she was kind of bringing the characters forward into whatever they plan. It's a Thunderbolts thing that people are talking about. I saw a thing on TikTok where Ross doesn't look well, and the theory is he's about to die, but he takes super soldier serum and turns into the Red Hulk, and that's going to be the B version of the Hulk for the Thunderbolts. It's a B grade Avengers group. That being said, I think ultimately if this movie never existed, you could have easily taken an episode of Hawkeye and said, okay, flashback for Yelena and, Black Widow and their whole story and how she's on a vendetta. Or you don't know about her character at all, and it's just like this mysterious person trying to kill Hawkeye, and they're fighting or whatever they're doing.
Yeah, it plays out you find out more.
And then it's revealed who she is and how she's so confused, and I think that would have been a cool reveal to kind of go through that like discovery. But now it's going to be, I don't know how she's going to show up in that we don't know anything, but it could have been an interesting journey, to say the least. I mean, I like it this way too. So I'm not Kevin Feige, so I don't take my word for it. I think he knows what he's doing.
I was going to say, I think I trust him.
Yeah,
he's proven it that he knows what he's doing. So, yeah.
But I remember as they kept like pushing back Black Widow, he was like, it needs to be seen in the theater. Like, this can't be released. And I don't think it was a money thing. I think it was more of like an artistic, like story-driven thing. I still don't get it. I don't get why this had to be in the theaters. It seemed a little bit more personal towards him, or for him, than anything else. But still, it's here. It's sold. I love the movie. This is solid, like tier 3, tier 4. I think we're gonna do an MCU Attractionality eventually. I think this is like, I don't think this makes top 12 like in the Pixar movies as overall movies.
Yeah, I'm kind of around the same, and I kind of felt a little similar in my review of Luca, whereas like for like a regular movie, this was great. For an MCU movie or for a Pixar movie, it was kind of just average.
Yes, I'm down with that. For the sake of time, I don't think we're going to go over our topic of the week. We kind of keep doing this just to tease it out. There was a tweet from Theme Park Lore. It says, "What attraction would you make a special trip for if you heard it was closing?" So we're gonna hold that. We've got a guest coming on, so maybe we'll ask him that before we get into his conversation. So stay tuned next week for that topic. Hopefully, we'll stop talking during the news and actually go through the show format. But the review kind of was the topic of the week. Let's just keep it at that.
That's true.
So that being said, this week's DBC Expedition is on Mary Blair, a prominent artist working for Disney in the mid-20th century. The reason why we were thinking about what we were going to do next for like a little short-term DBC Expedition, and I was listening to a Disney Dish episode where Jim Hill was talking about the evolution of some rides, and they had a person write in that they distinctly remember as a kid watching when Lincoln was opening up in Disneyland. It was like must have been open for maybe a month or two. They said that they met Walt Disney watching that in that theater, watching the show with a blonde lady sitting right next to him and chatting about it. And they say from here on out, they always believe that it was Mary Blair watching it. So I'm like, that's a really cool tidbit. So I wanted to do a little bit more understanding of who she is. I mean, I've heard a lot about it, but I've never like sat down and read about her life and put all the pieces together. It was like a little tidbit here and here and here. Oh yeah, she did the mural at the Contemporary. Oh yeah, Small World, that type of thing. So I am going to hand it over to you, Phil, because you've got a pretty good story to tell us.
Yes, and I think the timing is really good because right now, obviously, the Contemporary is going through a bit of an overhaul, but the one thing that is not changing are those beautiful murals in the Grand Canyon Concourse. I know that was definitely one of those things where if they said they were getting rid of it, I could see people chaining themselves to those murals. So, and obviously they were created by Mary Blair. So I think the timing for picking this up is spot on. So just to kind of give a little bit of background. So Mary was born in McAlester, Oklahoma in 1911 as Mary Brown Robinson. She moved around a little bit, ultimately winding up in California and went to San Jose State University and then the Chouinard Art Institute in LA. She actually got a scholarship to go there. And that is where she met her future husband, Lee Everett Blair. And obviously then changed her name to Mary Blair. Both Mary and Lee were part of the California School of Watercolor Society, which was the style of her art and was much more of a traditional style, showing how to blend colors and, really not what we know Mary Blair for. Now, back in the day, that time, there wasn't necessarily a lot of well-paying job for fine artists, especially during the Depression and things like that. But Lee's brother, Preston, was an animator and actually helped them both get jobs with the Disney company. Mary first had a job with Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, or MGM, but she would then soon leave and join Lee at the UB Iwerks studio, and then they moved to Disney. She had some reluctance, but she moved there in 1940. She started working on a number of projects, including Dumbo, but she felt frustrated and restricted by the whole studio production process. And a lot of the ideas, she wasn't involved in creating the ideas, she was just executing somebody else's work. So ultimately, just a year later, in 1941, she actually quit the studios.
It's pretty interesting to hear about her. Like, it's a typical life of an artist, right? You kind of scramble for whatever work you can do. You have your real passions, but you got to pay the bills, right? So you kind of stick to whatever instead of doing her own art, she was stuck coloring in between the lines, essentially, for in part of the Disney Studios. What I give her credit for was actually quitting and trying to find and fulfill her, artistic passions in her own way. And but that didn't really last too long, because basically she quit, and then all of a sudden she goes on a trip with Walt Disney himself.
Yeah. So, a really critical event happened that really changed the future of the studios, and in some ways the Disney parks that came, years later. But it obviously was critical in the life of Mary Blair, so that the executives from the Disney Studios went on a 10-week trip that Walt Disney led, and took core members of his studios to South America. They went to Brazil, Argentina, Peru, Ecuador, Guatemala, Chile, and Mexico in 1941. A little bit about this trip, like why did it happen? So it was funded by the Franklin Roosevelt administration, part of their Good Neighbor program. It was considered a Good Neighbor trip, and part of it was a Hearts and Mind campaign aimed at fighting the spread of Nazism and fascism in the Americas. So basically, they saw that what we were fighting, in the U.S. against. They were seeing that creeping into South America and Central America.
Let me jump in here. Let's tie this into our first DBC expedition about Walt the Patriot and Americana. Yep. This is a lot to do with that type of thing.
Absolutely. And so Walt agreed to, so obviously Walt was asked to go because they saw him, with the success of Snow White, and that he was kind of pushing what Americana was. And so that was one reason why he was asked to go. But the reason that Walt agreed to go was because World War II was cutting into the studio's audience, especially in Europe. So they were losing a lot of money. Also, a lot of the animators went on strike, and Walt felt betrayed. And so this trip was also an escape from all those troubles. And he got an infusion of government cash because they agreed that they would pay the basic financial returns for 2 Latin American inspired films that came out of this trip. Now, okay, so that's why Walt went, but why was Mary there? And I did a bunch of research, looked at a couple places, and there were kind of 2 different schools of thought for why she went. Some of it was that Walt was really, kind of enamored by her and her artistic style, and thought she would be a great person for this, and asked her to go. However, according to John Canemaker, who's a New York animator and animation historian, he said that she heard that her husband Lee was going to go to South America with Walt, and she had what he said the gumption to go in and ask if he would take her too. So I don't know which side is right, whether if she pushed for it or for Walt pushed for it, but sometimes I think those kind of events that go down into legend sometimes have those sort of convoluted ideas of nobody knows exactly what happened. But either way, she was there, and she returned a very different artist.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I'm putting up on screen a video of the 3 Caballeros, and you can definitely see her style of art. I'm showing the train going through and everything else. And what's really cool is this was basically a pivotal moment. Apparently, no one knows why. Her art suddenly changed, right? Yeah. And an article I found by Bill Kinder of Eat Drink Films had a conversation with Ralph Eagleton of Pixar. He worked on a lot of different films, including Incredibles, Aladdin, Toy Story as art director. He was a developmental artist for Soul. And he's credited for the original story of Monsters, Inc. So this is no schlub. This is a guy that's, has a storied career.
He's credible. Yeah.
He's very credible. He knows art. And so Bill's talking to Ralph, and I'm just going to read the quote because I think it's kind of rather interesting. It says, there are different theories about the source of the change. You can form your own as you look at her work. No one knows exactly why. But it was after this trip that anything that you could call Blair-esque. So before, I don't have any art to bring up, but before she, went on this trip, a lot of her art was like watercolors. It was kind of drab, the colors that you kind of saw that for her to be, because she was big on combining different colors and kind of allowing the eyes to kind of soak them all in. It wasn't really there right? So it was. I don't want to say it wasn't dark or anything, but it was like a watercolor style art. So you also mentioned that Maker organized materials in a straightforward three act structure before, during, and after. And Ralph says that we'll be able to see some of her early touches in her later work, but no seeds of that later work approach are visible before the South America trip. And he called out the before and after as the learning portion of things, and then the breaking of the rules. And breaking the rules really is kind of a way you can kind of describe it. As somebody that doesn't know anything about art or has studied it, but I could appreciate artistic styling and stuff like that. You can see the juxtaposition of a lot of different shapes, how shapes are used and whatnot. And we'll talk about why that was kind of difficult for her. I'm going to play again some of the stuff in the background. Just take a look at the train as it's moving. Square wheels, the pinks and the peaches and the oranges and all that other stuff that really kind of blends together, and that's kind of unique, and that's kind of like the art style that we'll see from Disney over a couple decades.
Yes, exactly. And so that the work that Mary was producing during and after the South American trip really inspired Walt. He seemed really just enamored with the style, and kind of, he was always a fan of fine art and really wanted his animators to be artists. And so when he sees somebody who has this background and has this thing that's really inspiring him, he really kind of pushes it and wants to see this kind of influenced in the studios. So he actually appoints her as art supervisor for the animated films that were coming out of this South American trip, Saludos Amigos and The Three Caballeros. And Jason's sharing a scene from that. As you can tell, it has bright technical, almost like a neon look to some of the colors. Mm-hmm. And the new style of work, it was reflective there, as well as some of the design she did for some other shorts, such as Make Mine Music and The Headless Horseman and The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. She designed that. Again, you can kind of see that sort of flat style to that. And anyone who's familiar with those works, or a lot of her work that come over, it almost has a little bit of a folksy style to it to me, which is much different than the more realistic and more curvy nature of the prior Disney animated movies. If you think of Pinocchio and things like that, it's just very sharp contrast between the styles.
Absolutely.
So as the decade went along, Lee and Mary actually left California for New York at this point. And Walt made the very unusual decision to keep Mary employed at the studio despite her living on the other side of the country. And it wasn't like they had Zoom calls back then or anything.
Nope.
So it kind of showed just how much he appreciated the work and how he thought it would influence and improve the studios, like we were talking about. As the 50s arrived, Mary's influence really started to take off, and she was credited with color styling for Cinderella. And you can clearly see that in a lot of scenes, such as with the pumpkin coach. It's that really kind of color blocking and not blending of the colors, but a little bit more two-dimensional. And again, that kind of almost folksy look to it.
I just showed two pictures, one with the scene where the birds are picking up the dress, and one of her also stylings of the carriage. Obviously, it's not the carriage that she designed that's being animated there, but like a lot of the and I think I might be cutting you off a little bit on here, but a lot of the backgrounds that are used in those movies were actually her artwork.
Yeah.
So if you remember, Disney's great at animating, but they use a lot of her backdrops to play that animation in front of.
Yeah, and then she also worked on creating the concept art for Alice in Wonderland and Peter Pan. Again, when Alice is walking through the woods and the leaves, they're very kind of that very traditional Blair-esque style to them. Also, author Greg Cook commented that she was a master of mood, and how the mood that she was trying to set really translated into the films, such as the dreamy nocturnal feel that Peter Pan has. Now, this clashed a bit with a lot of the Disney artists, as this style was a sharp contrast to what they were used to doing, which is the more rounded and realistic style. But also her art is kind of flat looking and more two-dimensional, and they have to animate that. So how do you kind of animate a two-dimensional thing? It proved to be a challenge. That's not to say that she had, everybody hated her or anything. I think they appreciated her and what she was trying to do. It just it was a challenge for them. So they weren't necessarily, as accepting of everything that she wanted to push forward. But, obviously Walt was in charge, and he did a lot of things where he would pair up people that maybe on the surface would conflict, but he knew that could bring out a greater finished project. So Walt continued to push to have Mary involved in more projects.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, the strength of, I guess, her conviction, I guess, right? So she was passionate about what she was doing, and she kind of pushed forward her ideas. She was also a woman that had ideas, which wasn't, the norm in the 1950s. If you want to watch Mad Men, you can see why, right? And not only that, Walt had a very special, I don't want to say special relationship with her, but there was definitely mutual respect, I guess. You mentioned that she was still on the payroll out in New York, so she got special dispensation about Walt. She went on a trip with him after she quit, type of thing. So I don't know if that has to do with any kind of jealousy or any kind of like favoritism or put kickback from that. But you can see the conflicts just from a kind of like colleague social aspect of things. And like you mentioned, the art style. Again, I'm not an artist, so I don't know how difficult it would be to animate those things. But, a lot of her drawings are true, two-dimensional art. They're very flat. But you can kind of see they've done a wonderful job, like adapting the palettes and the feeling of a lot of her art. And I guess that's what came out of it.
Exactly. However, at this time, despite all this, she was having a desire to do more of her own, more of her creation, things that she really were truly hers, that she came up with. And so she left Disney again in 1953. But she did a lot of different things while she was away. She was a freelance illustrator, and she created advertisement campaigns for Nabisco, Pepsodent, Maxwell House, and others. She illustrated for the Little Golden Books, which a lot of us have probably seen one of those and maybe not even realize the one they were looking at, Mary and Blair did. One of her most famous ones is the I Can Fly book. She created scarves and dresses for Lord and Taylor. And this one, I always find interesting that she designed Christmas and Easter sets for the big shows that they would do at Radio City Music Hall. So she definitely was, whether it was due to her experience with Disney or those connections, whatever, she was able to get her art and get seen and have quite the career. Even this has none of her Disney stuff. As any artist who did all these things, if that's all they did, that would be a pretty successful career.
What I find interesting, before you get to the next part, because the next section is like one of her world famous things she's done. I never knew she designed sets for Radio City Music Hall, right? So that starts giving her, maybe that's where she picks up experience about spatial kind of, three-dimensional spatial awareness when you're kind of designing some things. Because that kind of came in handy for her next project. Yeah.
And what happened was, even though, again, she wasn't working for Disney, Walt approached her to help design a boat ride that he was asked to develop for the United Nations Children's Fund Pavilion at the 1964 World's Fair. He had already committed to doing, I believe, 3 other exhibits or 3 other pavilions, and this request came in a little late, and a lot of his team said, we don't have time to take this on. So he brought her in to really kind of flesh it out and design it, and they had to get the whole thing done rather quickly. This exhibit was sponsored by Pepsi, and so, what I find somewhat ironically, given the complaint about the Disney animators, is that she needed to turn her 2-dimensional characters into physical 3-dimensional figures. Of course, this attraction or ride or pavilion, whatever you want to call it, was or became It's a Small World. Features over 300 audio animatronic dolls and traditional costumes from cultures around the world. I think everybody who's listening to this podcast, I assume, has heard of It's a Small World. That's probably written
I hope so.
Probably
in your card.
Has probably singing the song in their head right now. I'm sorry that it's stuck in your head now. But in some ways, this became the culmination of all her work, starting from that South American tour, which was stylized, colorful, cute. It had all the different, cultural heritage related to it. It was all the designing she had to do, but also, like you mentioned, the set design probably came into play. So it's interesting that her career, like everything she did, kind of came up, culminated in this attraction. And following the conclusion of the fair, the ride was moved to Disneyland. And since then, versions have been added to Walt Disney World, Tokyo Disneyland, Disneyland Paris, and Hong Kong Disneyland. As I write,
it's a must-have.
In a way, proving it is a small world after all.
After all. That was a clever line. I like that. I think, Phil, you should tweet out one of the links that you put in there that's in this one article where it's basically Walt showing somebody Mary Blair, and she kind of goes over her design, whatever. It's a really cool video. If you haven't seen it already, it's all over YouTube. And it kind of gives you how she kind of describes her art in her own terms, which I think is really interesting. There's been now I might be misremembering things, Phil. I think there's got to be something on Disney Plus with her somewhere. I don't know if it's with one of the Imagineering shows or somewhere, but I remember them
She
talking
definitely was
about.
featured in the Imagineering show, but there's also a couple others, and I'm not sure which ones are on Disney Plus or not, but there's some of the Wonderful World of Color that where Walt was going through the World's Fair stuff, and that's where he talked to Mary about It's a Small World.
Yeah, I think a lot of the cool stuff is just basically her use of color and their color palette. That's different from a lot of other artists, and I think that's worth kind of searching through Disney Plus and the Imagineering stuff, because I think he definitely talked about that on that show, just on the color stuff. Like Phil said, Small World was massively popular. It's all over the world now. It's in every major park. But a couple things at the World's Fair that just kind of some extra stats about how popular it actually was. And it's, I guess, the most publicly performed song of all time. It continues to have an impact everywhere. But 10 million 60-cent and 95-cent tickets for children and adults, respectively, were collected in 2 half-year seasons. It's a lot of people going through that ride. Because a lot of people went through that ride, these seem to be always seats available for the Small World of the World's Fair, where other attractions had lines out the door. Its high rider per hour capacity was recognized as a valuable innovation. It was incorporated indirectly and directly into future attractions. It's because it was so popular, they found a way to get all those people through there, which basically changed how Disney did all of our attractions. So here's one piece of information I did not know. And Phil, I don't know if you've heard this as well, because I pulled it off of this one's. This I think was from. I don't think I sourced this from Wikipedia, but in any case, Pirates of the Caribbean was under construction in Disneyland at the time. It was supposed to be originally just a walkthrough, but because the throughput of the boat ride was so great, they basically scrapped the whole system and put their own smaller boats that can kind of go through the whole system as well. I never heard that.
Yeah, I knew that Pirates of the Caribbean at one point was meant to be a walkthrough, but I don't know if I ever knew that connection, that it was sort of because of how well, that how Small World influenced the design decision they went to with Pirates.
And I think that's really cool that it kind of did that. So Small World, extremely popular and remains so today, and is actually going down. Part of it's closing down for refurbishment at this time.
Yep.
At Disney World.
Now, after all that work, Mary Blair did continue to do work for the Disney Company. In 1967, she created mural art for the Tomorrowland Promenade. Some of these murals were really highly prized by the guests that would go there. They're just kind of favorites of the guests. And unfortunately, they got covered over during different renovations, and at least one of them was destroyed. She did other things for the Disney hotels and resorts, including what became the focal point of the Grand Canyon Concourse at the Contemporary Resort. While that building was being built, it was meant to be this sort of centerpiece of a futuristic hotel, but it was feeling very cold and stark. And so they wanted to add something more sort of friendly and welcoming. And that's when they came up with the idea for the Grand Canyon Concourse and had Mary design those murals. And they're huge. They're 90 feet high, and all, individual, tiles and stuff like that. It's really pretty amazing. So I'm sure everyone listening to this has seen those murals. So that is very typical Mary Blair art. And of course, it includes the little tip. One of the goats in the picture has 5 legs.
Five legs.
I don't know if you ever know the reason why she gave that one.
If you have never seen it,
lastly,
let me pop in here. If you have not seen the Contemporary mural, you've only seen pictures of it, and there's a chance people have never been to the Contemporary that are going there. I would suggest the next time you're at the Magic Kingdom, you leave the park for like lunch and have lunch at the Contemporary, whether it's a quick service lunch or you go to Chef Mickey's or you go to the Wave whenever that reopens or anything else like that, and check out the mural. It's just really awesome to kind of see it in person.
The last thing that I'm aware of her designing for the parks was that, and her influence did make it over to Epcot, where she helped to create the character design for the animatronic dolls for what at the time was the El Rio del Tiempo ride, which is now the Grand Fiesta Tour at Epcot's Mexico Pavilion. Unfortunately, the passing of Walt Disney in 1966 really left Mary without a champion at the firm. We've talked before about how a lot of the animators and stuff kind of pushed back, maybe resented her a little bit. And so without Walt to really kind of force her, into certain places, they just, all the projects sort of dried up. And that, as far as I know, the Epcot one in the Mexico Pavilion is the last thing she did for the company. And after that, unfortunately, she has a bit of a sad ending in that she struggled to land design jobs with people telling her that her style wasn't modern enough. And she passed away in 1978 at the age of 66 of a brain hemorrhage. But her legacy does live on, I think, especially for Disney fans. So much of her work continues to be beloved, and her murals, some of them have been covered up, as I mentioned, but obviously the one in the Contemporary Resort is something, for a lot of people, that's one of the first things they see, right? When they come to Disney, if you're driving there for the day, you park at the TTC and take the monorail over, you're going to see that mural is one of the first things you're going to see.
Yep.
In 1991, unfortunately, after her death, she was honored as a Disney legend. And as I said, her presence will always be felt in a small world. And more directly than many may know, as there's a rendering of a little girl that's halfway up the Eiffel Tower is supposed to be Mary Blair. She's holding a balloon as she's climbing up the Eiffel Tower, and that's like a tribute to Mary Blair. That's supposed to be her. And that is a quick study of the life of Mary Blair and the impact on the Disney company.
I think it's I think it's just an amazing story because one, it's just, I mean, she is a Disney legend, and not every Disney legend is known, but it's. I'd like to get her name more out there because most people that go through the small world, it's iconic, but don't know where that came from. So I think it's important to kind of share where her design comes from, and I think her true legacy to the Disney company and the world is an amazing art form. But I think Disney particularly, there's this little pockets because this is what Disney's great because Disney's been around in a park sense for, make me do math now, almost 70 years, right? And there's these pockets of nostalgia or history that are in the parks now because they've been around so long. Whether it's the murals, whether it's the originator of the Small World ride, maybe one day those murals are shown again on Tomorrowland if they're not damaged, who knows. The books and the materials and even like the artwork, like you can go into any single gift shop probably in Magic Kingdom and find some kind of art based off of her, whether it's a purse or a picture in a frame, like just simple art or just, toys or like a dress on a doll type of thing. They're like, her stuff's all over the place. And many people might say, oh, that's the Small World style. No, that's Mary Blair style. That kind of encapsulates all that. Do you think there's any particular influence where you'll see more stuff from her, or is she now just a legend and we have to appreciate what she's done? What do you think?
It's probably more the latter, but I do think that kind of that folksy, cute, got mentioned, especially with a Small World. I think everyone realized there's a place for that at Disney, right? And they keep adding new things that have that as well. Even some of the style to, obviously they're set to look like the characters, but even the animatronics, like in the new Frozen ride, have a little bit of that cutesy kind of touch to them too. So I think Disney knows that they can continue to keep that as part of their plan going forward. But it probably will be that where it's not necessarily like, oh, this is something new or big, but it's like, this is pulling on those nostalgic feelings, pulling on our history and just keeping that in the park to make it what Disney is. And kind of also that impact on Americana. You mentioned it going back to our one of our prior DBC expeditions, but the whole small world, and that it's a small world after all, and we can be, that's part of what Walt pushed forward too, and was part of that kind of Americana spirit. And she had as much to do with that as almost anyone. So I think absolutely more than anything that might be her lasting legacy.
We're gonna end the DBC expedition here. I really like that story, and Phil, I appreciate you telling us. So I don't forget, this week's DBC recommends. We're gonna do this really quick. This is a good one. I've only seen the first 2 episodes with my kids, but it's the Mysterious Benedict Society on Disney Plus. My 2 older kids really enjoyed this. I'm not going to give any spoilers, but it's essentially some children are recruited to help save the world. We're just going to put it that way. And the only comment I have for this is I think my kids had nightmares after watching the first episode. Maybe not like nightmares, but like they were anxious because there's an energy to the show, like of urgency and that type of thing. So it's a mysterious show and there's bad guys and good guys, that type of thing.
Yeah, no, I agree. We've watched all 4 episodes so far. We really like it. I can definitely see, the younger kids being a little freaked out, like what's going on, and it's almost sort of like a spy movie or something like that.
Kind of, yeah.
It's got kind of got those elements, obviously with kids and stuff like that. So I think that's what makes it more approachable. So I think it is one of those shows for pretty much the whole family. You can watch together. It has a lot of kind of funny, oddball humor and stuff like that. So it might be one of those things you either love or not your thing, but we really like it. And it's definitely been one of those things that when a new episode's out, the kids are like, oh yeah, we got a new episode of that to watch. Let's go watch it. So it's a good one for the family.
I definitely suggest kids age 6 and over are probably good for it. They might not, and like a 5 or 6 year old maybe might not have the patience to understand it a little bit. My oldest 8-year-old daughter really liked it. So my wife said, no, we're not watching that at night anymore. But if we have like a rainy afternoon, we can catch up on it. So we'll certainly do that in the coming weeks to kind of catch up on the episodes. Do we know how many episodes are going to be all together?
You know what? I should have looked that up. I don't know.
Well, you know what? We'll find out as it unfurls with the story.
That's part of the mystery.
Yes, exactly. That being said, guys, thank you very much for watching. Check out the channel for Loki in a couple days. We're going to wrap that up. I think we're going to probably have a longer episode as we kind of talk about the future of the MCU. I have a feeling that the ending is going to be very good versus WandaVision, where the ending was good, but it was also not as good as we were hoping it would be with some of the non-reveals, that's so to speak. But we appreciate your patience going 16 minutes longer on this show than usual. I hope you enjoyed it, and have a great week, everybody. Thank you so much.
Take care, everyone.